السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. أما بعد. Today I feel the burden of an awesome responsibility. First of all, because this is a holiday, many people are not at work, the kids are not at school, so we have some people who are with us today for Salatul Jumaa that are not usually here. And so the khutbah better be good. Our Imam, our Sheikh, is not with us for the khutbah today because he has gone through an illness recently and he's recovering. Alhamdulillah, he's doing well. Don't be worried. But make dua for him. Make dua for our Imam, for our Sheikh, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him strength and return him to full health and give him many, many years of good health to continue to be our Imam and to lead our community. So with this opportunity to give the khutbah today, there are many things we could talk about. We could bring a topic for the youth because the kids are out of school and hopefully they're here, not at home playing video games. We could talk about these holidays, Christmas and New Year's holidays. Should we celebrate, shouldn't celebrate? These questions come up every year. But I find myself only able to talk to you about one thing today. And unfortunately, it's not a happy topic. It's something that brings me sadness, and I'm sure is bringing you sadness. Our community has gone through a tough couple weeks. Our community here in Ohio, and particularly in central Ohio, in the Columbus area, have had not one, but two major tragedies just over the last few weeks. The first one, as you know, was one of our community activists, the leader of our Ohio chapter of CARE, was discovered that he was helping an anti-Muslim hate group of Islamophobic people for many years. And this was a major tragedy for us. This was a shock. This was a source of sadness, anger, I'm sure, for many people. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, you know, it's CARE. I don't really know much about CARE. It's just some organization, Muslim organization. I didn't really know this person. Maybe you never met him, never spoke with him. Maybe you never asked him for help with some legal issue or some civil rights issue, which is the role of CARE. But I would remind you that the Prophet ﷺ described the Muslim ummah, the Muslim community, as one body. So when one part of the body hurts, is in pain, the whole body can't rest, can't sleep. So maybe you don't know much about CARE. Maybe you don't know this person. But brother, sister, you're a Muslim. You're a Muslim. This is a Muslim organization working for Muslims, working for you. So this betrayal, even though you may not have felt it individually, know that it was a tragedy for our community. And if nothing else, feel the sadness for your brothers and sisters who were shocked and betrayed by this individual. We're all one body. And I would remind you, brothers and sisters, that if you don't consider your finger as part of your body, then you won't be upset if someone comes and takes your finger. And if you don't consider this hand as part of your body, then you won't be upset if somebody comes and chops your hand. And if you don't consider this arm part of your body, then you won't be upset if somebody comes and chops your arm. And your other arm, and your leg, and the other leg. And let me remind you, brother, when they finally come for your head, and they will come for your head, where will be the body to defend you? We are one body. Anything that affects one of us, or a group of us, or one of our organizations that's working for us, is an attack on all of us. And yes, will make us sad. The other tragedy which struck us just in this last week was the murder of one of our imams here in Columbus area, the Imam of Abu Hurairah Masjid, Imam Muhammad Hassan Adam, rahmatullahi alayhi. And maybe you will say, you know, I didn't know this imam. He wasn't my imam. I don't go to that masjid. Oh, he was one of the imams for the Somali Muslim community. No. He was my imam and he was your imam. He was all of our imam. And he was brutally murdered and taken away from our community. How can we not feel sad? Now, some people might tell you, Muslims should never feel sad. It's un-Islamic to be sad. You should always be happy because you remember Allah. Is it normal to be sad? Are we allowed to be sad as Muslims? I would say absolutely. In fact, if you're not sad, something's wrong with you. As always, we look to our example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Was he ever sad? Or he was always happy? When bad things happened, tragedies, he didn't get sad? Of course. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam got sad. We know from the seerah that there was Am al-Huzn. Am al-Huzn was the year of sadness. And you're telling me the Prophet ﷺ didn't get sad? No, he had a year of sadness, as the scholars explain it in the seerah. During that year, the Muslims in Mecca were boycotted, were exiled to a valley that had no vegetation, nothing. Nobody would trade with them, sell them food, buy their goods. They were starving. And I know you have heard the hadith when the Sahaba were tying stones to their bellies out of hunger, and they came across the Prophet ﷺ. And he obviously sympathized with them, but he lifted his shirt and he showed them he had tied 2 stones. It was during this time. The Muslims were starving. They were eating leaves out of starvation. And during this year of sadness, the Prophet ﷺ lost his 2 biggest supporters, moral supporters, both financially and politically and morally, emotionally. His wife, Khadija, radiallahu ta'ala anha, and his uncle, Abu Talib. The Prophet ﷺ was sad. When the Prophet ﷺ lost his son, Ibrahim, and remember that the Prophet ﷺ had how many children? 7 children. And how many of those children did he bury? Died during his lifetime, before him? 6. Fatima, anha, was the only one who lived beyond the Prophet ﷺ, and only for a short time, as we know. 6 of his children died. He buried 6 of his children. 3 sons and 3 daughters. You think he wasn't sad? When Ibrahim died, his son Ibrahim died, and he died before reaching 2 years of age, as an infant. The Prophet ﷺ cried, had tears running from his face, crying out of sadness. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, وَأَنْتَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. He said, and even you are crying? Now, don't misunderstand and think that he was criticizing the Prophet ﷺ. Don't think that he was telling the Prophet ﷺ, hey, what are you doing? You're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to be sad. You're the Prophet of Allah ﷺ. You're not supposed to cry. No. You think the Sahaba would criticize the Prophet ﷺ like that? If you think so, then you don't know enough about the relationship between the Sahaba and how they treated the Prophet ﷺ, how much they admired him and revered him and obeyed him in every way. So he's not criticizing the Prophet ﷺ and saying, whoa, what are you doing? Hey, why are you crying? No. He's saying, even you are crying, meaning that if you're allowed to cry or you're crying, then all of us are allowed to cry too. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya ibn Auf, innaha rahmah. It's mercy. This crying is mercy. Now you could interpret that the Prophet ﷺ is saying that he's showing mercy by crying. It's because of his mercy in his heart, the softness of his heart, that he's crying. But crying is also a mercy for those around you. When you cry, you show your sadness, relieves your own sadness to cry, and you share that sadness with the people around you, and it becomes a source of rahmah for the people around you who are also sad and suffering. So if you don't cry when you lose your son, or something big like that happens to you, then you have no rahmah. Where's your rahmah? Where's the mercy in your heart? This deen did not come to make us hard-hearted people with no emotions, robots, soldiers. No. the example of the Prophet ﷺ is rahmah. So of course we're allowed to be sad when something bad happens to us. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of rahmah. It's a sign that this deen has entered your heart and has softened your heart. And Usama ibn Zayd, he asked the Prophet ﷺ when he saw him crying. He also started crying. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, I saw you crying, that's why I'm crying. Because he was a little afraid that maybe he shouldn't be crying. So he justified it by saying, I saw you crying, so I'm crying. The Prophet ﷺ said, I didn't forbid you from crying. I forbade you from wailing in grief. So we know the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from, when someone dies or something bad happens, yelling and screaming and tearing our clothes and cursing and whatever else. This is not allowed. But sadness and crying and grief is natural. It's human. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. He knows us. He's not asking us to be robots and not to be human. This is normal. So yes, we are allowed to be sad as Muslims when something happens to us. And when our community suffers two major tragedies this close together, we're allowed to be sad. We should be sad. Can you imagine if something happened to our Imam of our masjid? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect him from anyone that would cause harm to him or anyone in our community. Can you imagine how we would feel? This is how our brothers and sisters are feeling at the brutal murder of Imam Muhammad. We should be sad. If we're not sad, something is wrong with us. But there are two lessons that I think we can take away from these tragedies. Many more than two, but two that I want to share with you. One is that we know this life is a test. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to test us in this life and bad things are going to happen. We weren't created to live in this life and for this life to be Jannah and for everything to be happy and easy and delivered to you whenever you need anything. That's not this life. Inshallah, that's the next life. So we know there's going to be tests and trials in this life, tragedies that happen to us individually in our lives. Family members will die, we lose our business, our wealth, whatever. Things will happen to you personally. Things will happen to our community, the community of Muslims, here and around the world. But we know that those difficulties, those tests, those trials, those tragedies that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows to happen to us, they will never be more than what we can handle. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to send us a tragedy that we can't handle. And the size and magnitude of the tragedy is proportionate to what we can handle. Meaning that when a huge tragedy comes to you, whether personally or to us as a community, it's because you're able to handle it and because you're strong enough for it. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't have sent you that. So the size of these, the magnitude of these two tragedies coming to us like this, back to back, is really a reflection that our community is strong. Our community is strong, growing, and getting stronger. And so the tests are going to get harder. That's not a reason for us to give up. That's something that should energize us, reassure us that yes, difficulties are coming. More than these, there will be more difficulties. But it's only because our community is so strong, and we are strong enough to respond to these tragedies and to keep moving forward with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second takeaway from these two difficult tragedies that have come to us in such a short period of time, before we had really a chance to recover from one, the next one came. And Allahu Alam, maybe there's more on the horizon. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us more and more strength to be ready for them. There will be more. The other thing to remember from these tragedies, these difficulties, it is normal for us to be sad. It's okay. It's part of rahmah. The Prophet ﷺ had many tragedies in his life, many things to bring him sadness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you just look in the Quran, how many times did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reassure the Prophet ﷺ during times of sadness? Quran is full of it, full of reassurances to the Prophet ﷺ because of all the difficulties that he was dealing with throughout his life. For 23 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was continuously revealing Quran, reassuring the Prophet ﷺ. Because he was going through so much difficulty, because he had the strength and the ability to carry that huge burden that most of us, all of us, would not be able to carry such a burden. He was unique, the best of creation. So while it's normal for us to be sad, what we're not allowed to do is to despair. Sadness is okay, it's normal. It's okay for a Muslim to be sad, no problem. Sadness, you may cry, someone died, we have these tragedies in our community. Yes, be sad. If you're not sad, again, something's wrong with you. You should be sad, but not despair, not giving up. Sadness is a normal human emotion. But when you allow the sadness to overtake you and prevent you from being able to function and live and continue to serve your purpose and accomplish your mission as a Muslim, as a human being, as a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's not allowed. Again, we look to the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had much more reason to be sad than you and me. Many, many, many worse things happened to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam than will probably ever happen to any of us. But did the Prophet ﷺ give up? Did he throw his hands in the air and say, forget it, can't do it, too much? Of course not. He's our example. So yes, we are sad. Bad things have happened to our community. And so we slow down a little bit. We take time to be sad, to process our sadness, but then we remind ourselves that we have a mission. And we have behind us the greatest support that anyone could possibly need, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, we have our families, we have our community, we have each other during these difficult times. But we have to remember, we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on our side. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what we're going through. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how we feel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever ready to hear our dua. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us as a community solace, peace in our hearts during these difficult times, and to help us with our sadness, but prevent that sadness from stopping us and holding us back from what we need to do as a community, as Muslims. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروا الله إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. استغفر الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Quick reminder before the second khutbah, which I promise will be short. A quick reminder, as Brother Atif told us, please, when you're in the masjid, wear your mask. I'm not wearing the mask so the microphones can work, because last time I wore it, they said you have to remove it. Otherwise, always wear your mask in the masjid, everywhere you go. If you're not vaccinated, go get vaccinated. What are you waiting for? If you're eligible and you can get vaccinated, go get vaccinated. And if your vaccine was more than 6 months ago, you need to go for a booster now. Yes, you need to go for a booster. Some people are still questioning, do I need a booster? Yes, no? Yes, you need a booster. The hospitals are getting so full now that they're reaching record levels even more than when COVID started. The National Guard has been deployed by the governor to the hospitals locally because the hospitals are so full that they don't have enough nurses to take care of the patients. This Omicron variant, this new version of COVID, is so contagious, they're saying that it's like the measles, which is the most contagious virus known to man. That's how contagious it is. It's breaking through the vaccinations so that, again, if you haven't had a booster, you're less than 50% covered. Go get a booster. Be careful. Use masks, social distancing, all of those things that we did when COVID first started, we need to get back to it. For your own protection and for the protection of our community. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. I'll end by notifying you, I'm sure there'll be an announcement after the Salah, but to let you know that there is a march and a rally today, starting at 2 o'clock downtown, in response as a community to the murder of Imam Muhammad Hassan Adam. Now again, some of you may be thinking, well, he wasn't our Imam, he was Imam of Masjid Abu Hurairah. No, today, he's my Imam. And you may say, well, he's, Somali Muslim, I'm not Somali Muslim. No, today I'm Somali Muslim. Today he's my brother. He's part of my family. And me and my family will be there. And if you don't have work today, and I know the kids have no school, then you will come too. The march starts at 2, and we'll be marching to the State House, where there'll be a rally to accomplish many things. One thing is to support the family who are suffering during this time, to let them know that we feel their pain. We are part of the same body. Number 2 is to let our brothers and sisters from Masjid Abu Hurairah and from the Somali Muslim community here in Columbus know that we are their brothers and sisters. We are part of the same community. We may not pray at the same masjid, but it doesn't matter. All of our masajid belong to all of us, and our imams are all of our imams. And lastly, we need to send a message to the non-Muslim community here in Columbus and around the world, really. We need to send a message that our blood is precious. You can't shed a Muslim's blood and the rest of the community sits by idly doing nothing. Our blood is precious. And so we will be there to let the world know that if you take one of our imams, we have 1,000 more people ready to continue with the mission. You won't stop us. So I encourage you, brothers and sisters, to join us for the march and the rally, to show our sympathy, but to show our strength, and to put pressure on the authorities here to find the perpetrators and to bring them to justice, so this doesn't become another cold case murder that's gone unpunished. Please join us and continue to make dua for our community and for the family of Imam Muhammad and for the soul of Imam Muhammad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا برحمتك شر ما قضيت إنك تقضي بالحق ويقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت فلك الحمد على ما قضيت ولك الشكر على ما أعطيت نستغفرك اللهم ربنا ونتوب إليك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وأقيم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة وقد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا لك. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا لك. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.